Welcome to the Win Streaks preview and prediction of all 32 NFL teams for the upcoming 2017 season. Over the next few weeks, I will be covering all 32 teams, so please subscribe on YouTube or the podcast platform you're listening on so you don't miss an episode. My name is Corey Foister. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Corey Foister. Please check out our fantasy league. Me and Brandon, my fellow co-host, will be doing a fantasy football league. You can find out more about the fantasy league by following us on social media. That is Twitter at Winstreak News and Facebook.com/The Winstreak. We have an official website, thewinstreak.com. Please leave a review if you are listening via podcast on the podcast platform you're listening on. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Our channel is Soaring Jets Productions. Contact us at soaringJetsProductions@gmail.com. We love to hear from our listeners, and we occasionally will read your mail on future episodes. If this is the first time you've ever listened to the Win Streak, we do a weekly wrap-up show where we talk about the latest sports news, me and Brandon. Please check that out as well. But the first team we are doing is the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, who is the butt of all NFL jokes. But I feel for you, Cleveland Browns fans, because I'm a New York Jets fan, and I think the Jets are going to be the butt of even more jokes than the Browns are going to be this year. I actually think the Browns are going to be a pretty decent team. Yeah, you didn't hear me wrong. A pretty decent team. But then again, after the awful 1-15 season they had last year, there's only one way to go, and that is up. Now, Cleveland Browns, the most famous thing people know about the Cleveland Browns is that the Browns have had 27 starting quarterbacks since 1999. Since they came back as an expansion team, they've had 27 starting QBs. This is Cleveland's 69th season as a franchise and the 65th season as a member of the National Football League. They are on a 14-year playoff drought. And I know this sounds bad, but the Buffalo Bills actually have a longer playoff drought, if you can believe it. But the Browns are on a 14-game playoff drought. The last time they made a playoff appearance was in 2002. They came close, and I believe it was 2008. They won 9 or 10 games, but missed out on a playoff berth. This is the second year for head coach Hugh Jackson and GM Brown. I really like Hugh Jackson. If you've listened to the show, any of these shows, I always go on about how much I like Hugh Jackson. I think he was a solid pickup for Cleveland. Cleveland has struggled to get big name players and coaches up there to help the franchise out because, let's be honest, sadly, when you think about the Cleveland Browns, you think of dysfunction, you think of losing, and hopefully Hugh and the front office will slowly. It's going to be a slow rebuild because Cleveland is not a destination that a lot of free agents want to go. So you have to build young. You can't really win in free agency. The Browns finished last in the AFC North, the AFC, and in the entire NFL. In 2016, the Browns posted a franchise-worst 1-15 season. Many question if the Browns would win a game. They went 0-14 before beating the San Diego Chargers at home 20-17. Crazy game. I was actually watching that live. Congratulations to the Browns for winning a game. But that's another reason I like Hugh Jackson because, I'm a Jets fan and I see Todd Bowles and he just shows no emotion. I look over there and I see Hugh Jackson. He is crying saying that, we need to do better for the fans. And if I'm a Browns fan, I like that because Hugh Jackson shows that he really cares, that he's not just picking up a paycheck and using Cleveland as a stepping stone to go somewhere else. The franchise has had a losing record for a franchise record 9 straight seasons. It's going to be the 6th straight season, finishing 4th in the AFC North. Browns only team last season to not have a road win. Their lone victory, like I mentioned a minute ago, came against the San Diego Chargers at home when they won by a field goal, 20-17. The Cleveland Browns are the only team. Let's see here. The only team to not win a game on the road. Their owner is Jimmy Haslam, who bought the Browns in 2012 for 16 or $1 billion, I should say. The Browns are valued at 977 million by Forbes, good for 20th in the NFL, which really shocked me. The Browns are the 20th most valuable franchise in the NFL, but consistently is in the bottom three, bottom five of team performances. Let's be honest. Since they came back to Cleveland in 1999, Jimmy Haslam, he's from Tennessee. People were saying that he was buying the Tennessee Titans. He partly bought, I think, the year before or 2 years before. I think it was 20% ownership stake in the Pittsburgh Steelers, so he had to sell that, and then he picked up the Browns. Um, Jimmy Haslam, I don't really know. He's not the worst owner out there, so Browns fans, you can't blame him for everything. I say there's a way worse owners out there in the league. He's not a Robert Kraft, but at the same time, he's not say, Woody Johnson of the Jets or a Mike Brown with the Cincinnati Bengals. Brown's last division championship was in 1989 as a member of the AFC Central. They have never won the AFC North, but they do have 28 playoff appearances, the last being 2002. Before that, 1994, 1989, 88, 87, 86, 85, 82, 80, and so on. They were actually a really solid team in the 80s. Four NFL championships, 1950, 1954, 1955, and 1964. I believe only two years removed from when the Super Bowl started. I think the first Super Bowl was in 1966, if I am correct there. No Super Bowl appearance, along with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Detroit Lions, and the Houston Texans. The Browns are a suffering fan base, but things could have went different. Probably one of the biggest what if I could say about the Cleveland Browns is that in 1999, the Browns used the 29th spot in the expansion draft to draft Scott Milovich of the Buccaneers and drafted Tim Couch number 1 overall in the NFL draft that year. Milovich never threw a pass for the Cleveland Browns. And here's the real stinger here. St. Louis Rams left Kurt Warner unprotected in the expansion draft. Wow. The Cleveland Browns could have had Kurt Warner when they came back to Cleveland in that expansion team. And you have to think that it would have probably having Kurt Warner as your quarterback, that would have changed the whole course of the history of the Browns. The Browns would not, I find it very hard to believe the Browns would still be the butt of all these jokes on NFL memes and all these different places. And I feel for Cleveland fans, but, Cleveland, LeBron James showed you can win a title in Cleveland, but let's be honest, this front office and the management and the coaching staff and the players, everything sucks. But I see a light at the end of the tunnel. Moving to 2017 now, this was kind of a preview of the team going to my projections and what I like about this team roster. Hugh Jackson, once again, head coach. I say his job is completely safe. I would personally do what the Cincinnati Bengals have done with Marvin Lewis. I would keep him there no matter what happens. I'd keep him here for a decade or more. Marvin Lewis has been the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, I think, since 2003. I would just leave Hugh Jackson, because who are you going to get? You're not going to get anybody better than Hugh Jackson. You might get some rookie guy who's unexperienced and never been a head coach. I like Hugh Jackson. I would just keep him and ride with him for 3-4 more years, unless he gives you only one win every season. And yeah, of course you have to break up, but if he gives you 5-6 wins every season, and it's like, oh, I want playoffs and stuff. Just remember where you've been. Uh, Best quarterback lineup in Cleveland in years, in my opinion. You got Cody Kessler, Brock Osweiler, and second round pick DeShone Kizer. Some intriguing possibilities. No more RG3, Johnny Football, Brandon Whedon. I really like this is a solid quarterback lineup for Cleveland standard. Like I said, Cody Kessler, Brock Osweiler, and Kizer. I really like this lineup. I think Cody Kessler is probably going to get the starting job, but I would not sleep on either Osweiler or Kizer. I would not, honestly. I think Osweiler, they didn't give him of a enough time in Houston, but I understand why they didn't, because they're a playoff team now. Their window of opportunity of making it to a AFC championship, possibly going to the Super Bowl, is now. JJ Watt is only going to get older. So of course the pressure's on Houston to win now, but for Cleveland, yeah, you got another draft pick. That's basically why you picked up Brock Osweiler. But I would give Brock Osweiler a serious chance. I don't think he's worth that kind of money. I think he's overrated. But now I think he's underrated because everybody said, well, he's an awful quarterback. I don't believe that. I think he could be something. He's not going to be a Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, he's not going to be a Geno Smith, Mark Sanchez, one of these kind of quarterbacks. I think he can be a game manager type quarterback for the Browns. And Kizer, I like what I saw from him when I watched him in his college games, and who knows? Like, once again, Cleveland has the best lineup in years, maybe since they came back as the expansion team in 1999. Biggest positive change is increase in talent on both offense and defensive lines this year. First overall pick, Myles Garrett, gives Browns a major piece to build around at defensive end, and team drafted two other defensive linemen, added right guard Kevin Zettler and center J.C. Tretter in free agency, and extending left guard Joel Bettino gives Browns a stronger offensive line to help beat Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas has to love this, has to love that the Browns are actually making smart decisions, and he doesn't have a quarterback on the sidelines posting pictures of him drunk on an inflatable swan. So the circus has left. I really like what Cleveland is now doing. The only thing negative I can say about Cleveland is that Cleveland spent a lot of time working with Terrell Pryor as he transitioned from quarterback to wide receiver. I think it was worth it working. He over 100 yards, or over 1,000 yards, my bad. But sadly, Pryor left for Washington, D.C., the Redskins, in the offseason. So all that progress goes right in the toilet because you could not re-sign him. But in my opinion, the positives so outweigh the negatives. Going to the preseason before we get to the regular season and my game by game prediction. Preseason, you got the Saints at home for week 1. Week 2, you got the Giants at home, and then you're on the road for the final 2 games at Buccaneers and at Bears. I don't really follow much of the preseason. I say the Browns could maybe win maybe 1-2 games here. Maybe the Saints, maybe the Bears, depending on it's hard to predict preseason because you don't know who's really going to play, who's going to get how many minutes, and it's just preseason to me. I know some football fans really get into it. I get bored. I get excited for the first week, and it's like, okay, I'm ready for real football where the starters play all 4 quarters over just 5 minutes of the first half. Now going on to the regular season, you open up at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I say, well, I'll go through the schedule here real quick. You open up with Pittsburgh Steelers. I say that is a loss. Even best scenario, that's a loss as well. The at Ravens, week 2 at Ravens, I say that's a loss. Even best scenario, you're still losing that game. At Colts, I'd say probably a loss. Best scenario, though, I say you do pull out a victory. So that is in September, you have only 3 games: Steelers, at Ravens, at Colts. You go into October, home against the Bengals, home against the Jets. I say the Jets are definitely a win. Either, worst scenario and best scenario, you're going to beat my New York Jets. At Texans, Titans at home, Vikings in London, but you're the home team, and then a bye. And then you go to November at Lions, the Jacksonville Jaguars at home, and then at Cincinnati for the Bengals. And in December, you got at Rams in Los Angeles, home for the Packers and the Ravens, at Chicago for the Bears, and at Pittsburgh for the Steelers. I believe this is the 6th consecutive time the Browns have closed out their regular season in, or not in, or either way, either at Pittsburgh or at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Cleveland Browns have no primetime games, but the Viking game, like I mentioned, is in London. So let's go through this list. The opening up against the Steelers, I don't see how they're going to win that at all. The Ravens at Baltimore, once again, I don't see how they win that one at all. At Colts, probably not going to happen, but if they get lucky and they actually do win one for the month of September, I say it's going to be against the Colts. Granted, the Browns almost beat the Ravens last year, and I think they can do it again, but I think it's when the Ravens come to Cleveland. So Steelers, Ravens, Colts for September. That's a hard start for the Cleveland Browns, but it gets easier in October. You host the Bengals, which I say you're probably going to lose that game as well. But in best scenario, you win that game. And in the following week, you got the Jets. I say the worst scenario or the best scenario, you will beat the New York Jets. The Houston Texans, I say you're going to lose that just because you're in Houston. Personally, I'm not big on the Houston Texans. Vikings, or you got Titans after that. Titans, I think the Titans are going to be a solid team. I don't see how the Browns are going to upset the Tennessee Titans. The Vikings, that game's in London. London's such a weird series of games that probably not going to beat the Minnesota Vikings, but at the same time, there's a possibility just because of all that weird traveling going out there. They could surprise a lot of people. So in best scenario, I say the Cleveland Browns can beat the Minnesota Vikings. Go to November, you only have 3 games. At Lions, I don't see you winning that one. Jaguars at home, I see you winning that one. Worst scenario or best scenario, I see you winning that. At Cincinnati, likely a loss, but I could see in best scenario you winning that game as well. You go into December at Rams. I give it to the Rams just because you have to go out to Los Angeles. But I could see in best scenario the Browns beating the Rams. Hosting the Packers, I don't see how you beat the Packers. At home against the Ravens, that's a chance. At Bears, if there's one road game that the Browns have the best chance of winning, it's at Chicago, December 24th, the day before Christmas. And then you finish up at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh will probably be possibly looking for a higher seed, possibly maybe the second pick of the bye. I don't know. The Raiders and the Patriots, I think, are going to be right there. So I don't think the Steelers are going to be, they'll probably be challenging for the 3rd seed at best. But like I said, Browns going, like 6-10, 5-11. That would be huge. That's better than making the playoffs. I don't see any way the Browns make the playoff unless the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger, Brown, Bell, they all get hurt. And let's be honest, the Ravens would have to have their starting quarterback Flacco get hurt, and the Bengals would just have to suck again for the Browns to win a awfully weak AFC North. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see the AFC being that weak because you just look at the AFC West, you got the Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to compete. The loser of that division is going to get one of those wild cards. You got the Miami Dolphins. You got potentially the Houston Texans, maybe the Colts, maybe the Titans, the Jaguars. You maybe have the loser of the AFC South, one of those teams getting another wild card spot. So, and then you also got the Denver Broncos, so you can't count out. So I just don't see how the Browns are going to slip into the playoffs. So, best scenario, everything goes right. I say that the Browns could possibly be 7-9. I don't see them being 8-8. I just don't see how they can be a 500 team. But I think they can be. They can keep games close and win close games and say, beat the Colts in Indiana. You beat the Bengals. You beat the Jets. You beat maybe the Texans. You beat the Vikings in London. You beat the Jaguars at home. You beat the Bengals in Cincinnati. You beat the Rams in Los Angeles, and you beat the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Then you can potentially be 7-9. Worst scenario, you go 2-14. I say you're definitely going to improve on that 1-15 record of last season because you got the Jets at home, you got the Jaguars at home, and you're at Chicago against the Bears. Three of the worst teams. The only team I could see maybe I'd be wrong about is the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the Jets are completely tanking. The Bears don't know what the hell they're doing. I think they just drafted a bust with the second overall pick in the NFL draft this year. But my final prediction is 4-12. I believe the Cleveland Browns will be 4-12. I say they beat the New York Jets, they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars at Bears, and then they just get lucky and win one other game. I say likelihood maybe at Rams, a Bengal game, or Vikings in London. But this was our first episode, our first preview episode of the 2017 NFL teams. Once again, follow on social media at Winstreak News, facebook.com/thewinstreak, thewinstreak.com. Leave a review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening on. Subscribe on YouTube if you're listening on YouTube. Soaring Jets Production is our channel on YouTube. Contact us at soaringjetsproductions@gmail.com. How good or bad do you think the Cleveland Browns are going to be this year? I'd like to know. If you're on YouTube, please drop a comment. Give me what you think their record's going to be. Join our Fantasy Football League. You can find out more about our Fantasy Football League on facebook.com/thewinstreak. This is the first episode. We got 31 more teams to do. So please subscribe, stay tuned. And for you Browns fans out there, enjoy it. It's going to be another rough season, but you're going to see improvement, and nothing's going to be as painful as going 0-14 to start last season. This season's going to be a lot better. So good luck to Browns fans, and we will see you on the next NFL preview.